Here. Hello, everybody. My name is Susan Brooks. I am the current president of the South Coast Interfaith Council and very pleased to have you all here today. This is one of many of our courageous conversations that we've had during the pandemic when we had to shift to doing everything online. And this is a really important conversation that we wanted to have. It'll be followed in a month by a conversation about being Black and Jewish. I am a member of the Reform Judaism movement. I've been with New Ground for about 3 years now, but one of the reasons I was asked to moderate today is I'm also a graduate of New Ground, which is a Muslim-Jewish Partnership for Change. It's a professional fellowship that goes for 9 months. And I've also done a lot of other facilitating training around race and hard conversations. So I'm really pleased here today to have these two amazing people that are going to share their stories and answer some questions for us. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on them. First, we have Kenyatta. She's been in education for 29 years as a teacher, a director, a principal, owner of a childcare business. Right now, she's a professor and a consultant to early childhood education centers. She was born and raised Muslim in Los Angeles. She has her bachelor's degree in child development and a master's in early childhood education. She's helped open several schools, including her own preschool, and she helped open the Islah Academy, a Muslim school that serves South Central Los Angeles. And Umar is also a member of that same community. She helped open a charter school, in South LA that is housed in the Bilal Islamics campus. She's an adjunct child development professor for LA Community College District and a senior trainer and research fellow for the Muslim Anti-Racist Collaboration, which is also called Muslim ARC. She produced the film Muslima's Guide to Marriage and is a proud Black Lives Matter member. Her favorite children's book is Where the Wild Things Are. I share that with you, Kenyatta. And in her free time, she loves to hike at the beach and parks. She's a practitioner of yoga and meditation, and she's considered the self-care guru among her friends. And I love that both of these individuals gave us a little bit of personal insight in their bios. Umar is a native of Compton, California. He went to school at my husband's rival school, and he's the consulting director of ILM, which is the Intellectual Love and Mercy Foundation. He also started his own organization, as you can see on his shirt. It's pronounced Encourage. It's an advisory organization whose mission is to help build capacity for purpose-driven organizations and individuals through program development, audience insights, and one-to-one leadership coaching. He's responsible for ILM's foundation programming and social entrepreneurial vision for social change. So he got his education from, Claremont Lincoln in ethical leadership. And I know, as somebody who knows him personally, he's applied those skills in many, many venues. His focus is to design encouraging next steps for leaders in need of clarity so professionals can better connect socially and lead a more relevant and responsive culture. So he does individual consulting as well. And he encourages interfaith dialogue and developing relationships across a wide scope of genres and positive people. He's also the founder of some really amazing programs, including Humanitarian Day. I believe you're a founder of that, right?
No, I'm not the founder.
Okay.
I'm
giving you too much credit. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm not the founder.
He's an integral part of Humanitarian Day, which is a day where Muslims go into the homeless community and serve the people in all various means. And I will share a quote that he shared with me. I see society spiritually growing and becoming more aligned to ethical leadership and human rights. We are all social innovators seeking to improve ourselves using tools that are religious, academic, business strategies, shifting elements for design actions of compassion and community organized, which all drives the imagination. So you can see that our two panelists are pretty amazing. We're so pleased to have them here. And I'm going to start with Kenyatta and ask, can you share a bit about yourself and your experience as a Black Muslim?
First of all, I just want to thank you as well for having me on. You're a great group. You guys came on and did a training with us, and I instantly fell in love with you all because I love the interfaith space as well. So to have Jewish brethren and Christian brethren and Muslim all together is really just that harmony that I love. So I wanted to say that first. Thank you. And a little bit about me. I was born in 1971, so I just turned 50 this past June, and I'm elated to turn 50, to live a half a century and to see so much happening. And I grew up in the 80s, like the 70s and the 80s, right? And my parents converted to Islam from college. They met in a little, I was just talking to Mila about it. They met in a little small town called Warrensburg, Missouri, where my father was this activist coming straight out of Vietnam War, and was a part of Student Nonviolent Coalition and was ready to shake that city up, right? And I won't say what he did, but he shook the city up. So, as my mother said when I was, arrested for a peaceful demonstration in '92, you're just like your dad, right? So I got that honest. But my parents decided to come to Los Angeles in 69, 68, 69, and they were encouraged by the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, as well as Malcolm X. And so we know most, not all, but a large percentage of Black Muslims that you see present day, especially, me, I'm second generation. I have nieces and nephews that are third generation. I don't have any physical children. We all come from that space. And so to know my history, and to hear my history growing up was one of pain, but also happiness, and joy, right? My father was a bit all over the place, and my grandfather was a deacon of a church. And so a lot of people thought when my father converted to Islam that he would be ousted, from our family. But my family embraced it. They were grateful because Islam gave him focus. It gave him purpose. It really carried on the same principles and practices that my grandparents, really instilled in him as a child. So, growing up Black and Muslim was awkward at times, right? Because I would be the only person, as some people see my name, Kenyatta. I was named after the first Black president of Kenya. My last name is Bakir, which means precocious. My siblings have Muslim names, right? So we walk in with these, different names, but we didn't understand that they were different because we kind of grew up in a bubble. So one of the places where I helped open a charter school was originally a Muslim school. But prior to that, it was a Muslim school, but it was two phases. It was Muhammad University when they were in the nation, and then it became Sister Clara Muhammad, which was named after Wardi Muhammad's mother, who was the one who gave this mass conversion of people coming to Sunni Islam. So my parents were one of 2,000 people that converted to Orthodox Islam in 1975. And so I always joke and say that I was 4 years old, and one day they had on like the MGT FOI outfits, and the next day they had on just regular scarves and stuff. So it wasn't really a difference for me. I didn't really understand what it meant to be different until I went to public school in the 8th grade. And that's when I realized that I was, it was a little different, even though I went with other Black students. So for the most part, most people I knew had family that were Muslim or identified as Muslims. So I didn't really have too many hiccups. Sometimes kids tease and they would say Muslim and stuff like that. And, my father was known for calling the Adhan, the prayer, on our front porch. And my friends would say, your daddy's singing that song, y'all better go pray, So we just kind of just made Islam be a part of our fold. And we just taught people. And two people that grew up with me actually converted to Islam. One of them was my really dear friend since we were 7, and she converted to Islam when she was 21. And then another friend of ours, Mustafa Jabril, converted probably 15, 20 years ago. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. I kind of went all over the place, but that's a little bit of me.
That's okay. We'll be jumping around a little bit and it's all good. Umar, I'll ask you the same question to share a little bit about yourself and your experience.
Okay. Thank you, Malia, Susan, Kenyatta, for this invitation to be on this panel. My name is Umar Hakeem Day. Uh, just a good little quick story. South Coast Interfaith Council gave me my first award. Remember that, Malia? You're on
I
mute,
do, I
sis.
do.
They gave my
Yes,
first award. It was at a church in Torrance.
that's right. It was, I
Yeah,
think it
yeah,
was a
yeah.
Catholic church, if I remember
I'm not sure.
correctly.
All I know is
Yeah,
a church. It is a church, but I was really thankful to
yeah.
receive. It's on my shelf. So thank you very much.
Oh, of
Um,
course, well deserved.
my story starts with my mom. May she rest in peace. Coming from South America, Guyana, in 1965, came to Compton, California. She was a retired nurse in the Los Angeles County. I was born in 1970. Don't get to adding up my age, everybody. You know what I'm saying? Don't even go there. But I was born in 1970, raised in Compton as an alkalite in the Episcopal Church. Being of Generation X, hip hop became a major importance in my life. So we had artists like KRS-One, Poor Righteous Teachers, Chuck D, and they was dropping all these names. I'm like, where these names come from? So that kind of ignited my search for something outside of the Episcopal Church. So then there was this one song called "You Must Learn," and KRS-One went down the lineage of from Adam all the way to Abraham, alayhi salam. And so I went back to my pastor. It was like, or my preacher, or the father. They called him the father. I said, "Man, who are all these names? You ain't teaching me about these names." Or I wasn't paying attention. You know what I'm saying? So he couldn't answer my questions. So that really started my path. And then I was a cable technician for fast forward. My homeboy Duran, rest in peace, introduced me to the Quran, but he never gave me one. And then I was on my job for 13 years as a cable technician. And I met this sister by the name of Rebecca Smith. And it was New Year's, it was New Year's Eve, December 31st. And she's like, "Brother, you got to take off your boots before you come in my house." And I'm like, "No, I'm not taking off my boots for nobody. I'm a cable man." So then so I asked her, "Do she have some shopping bags?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Go get the shopping bags." So I wrapped them around my foot. Walked in, I fixed the problem because I was that type of cable man. Yeah, I fixed all my problems, right? Put the TV on 3, right? You know what I'm saying? So, so, uh, so as I was sitting down writing the work order out, there was a portrait on her wall, and it was the lineage from Adam alayhi salam down the whole lineage. Then it broke down to Abraham, then it broke down to Ishmael and Isaac. I'm like, who's all these people? Because I know the names on the Jewish side down to Jesus, peace be upon him, son of Mary, but it breaks down to Ishmael and it said Muhammad, so I didn't know these names. So she gave me a quick lesson in her home, and then I said, "What book can I read for discipline?" She then looked at me, went in the back room, and came out and was like, "Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim," which means in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, and gave me my first Quran. And that was on New Year's Eve, 1997. And I read that book every day in my cable truck for the next 6 months. So on July 3rd, 1998, she said, "Are you ready to take your Shahada?" I was like, "What?" She said, "Yeah, you ready to become Muslim?" I was like, "But there's one thing I got to do first." And she said, "What?" I said, "I tell you after do my Shahada." So I went home. I talked to my mom. My mom was raised in Guyana. She was raised with Muslims. So she really wasn't tripping. But I needed to have my last pepperoni and sausage pizza. You know what I'm saying? so, so, so I had my last pepperoni and sausage pizza on July, may have been, it maybe sometime in June, but on July 3rd, 1998, I took my kalima, which is the shahada, and I became Muslim, and it's been uphill learning ever since. You know what I'm saying? And so my identity, ever since I learned my Islam, I connect through my identity as I am Muslim. I'm the earthly son of Adam, as we all are the earthly sons and daughters of Adam. And I interchange African more with being than just being just black. You feel me? Because black is only a color. You know what I mean? But and that's a whole nother conversation. But you know, my identity is African Muslim, and I could trace my lineage through that. So you know, then my mom told me about our lineage back to Africa and the Congo. So you know, it's more to this story, but the short version. And Kenyatta's father let me lead Salat in his house when I really didn't know how to lead Salat because he was one of my customers. You know what I'm saying? So she definitely has a family of that does great dawah, and I'm happy to be here.
He loves that. He loves that. Whenever I tell him that, he always smiles.
Yeah.
Allah, what a blessing.
Small world that we all interconnect in these different ways.
Azan called a prayer.
And we won't talk about your age, Umar, because I'm the oldest one out of the four of us, so it's all good.
Okay.
I'm gonna start.
Well, it's all over my shirt, so they could figure it out.
Yeah, I was in that decade that came before that. I'm going to start with you. The question with you this time, Omar, is can you give us a couple of examples if you've ever felt othered in Muslim spaces because of being a man, a black man, and not what, you know, American society thinks of Muslims as Southeast Asian or Arab descent?
Well, I could tell you about feeling othered as an American citizen because my first time feeling othered, my first ounce of racism was in school and in Western civilization class. And they always had in the McGraw-Hill books, primitive pictures of Africans. And by my mother being from South America and telling me about my lineage, I became kind of embarrassed, even of my cousins. You see what I'm saying? I didn't know no better, you know what I'm saying? Because the images that they shown in those books really did a job on my psychology. So fast forward some years, this is a true story. When I started, after I got my award, people started calling me to speak and stuff like that. So I was on an assignment with him for Imam Sadiq, and he sent me to this big mosque. And I walked in, they said, report to such and such. So I found who the person was. And he said, okay, go over there, wait for me there. So as I walk in, you know, when you come to Isla LA, everybody greets you, you know, it's just hospitality off the bat. I walked in, I really didn't get no greetings, no one said anything to me. You feel me? And I was like, okay, you know what I'm saying? So then I sat in the back. So then they did the introduction. We'd like to welcome our speaker, Umar Hakim. Okay, what happened? Now everybody cheering me on, everybody speaking. I'm like, so imagine what's going through my head. But what I can say is, you know, it's this thing called impact and intent, and maybe that wasn't their intent, but it impacted me in that manner. You see what I'm saying? But you know, that was one time that I felt othered. You know what I'm saying? It was that one moment in Islam.
Kenyatta, what about you?
Well, I've felt othered a few times, but since I've lived in such a bubble, growing up as really like a Black Muslim, I didn't really leave my masjid, you know, so my comfort was, it was like being and I hate to sound so, you know, Disney, but it was like being a princess in a kingdom. Oh, that's the only way I can equate it. Like wherever I walked, because my father has some esteem in our community. You know, he's one of like, I found out later, he's one of the founding people to kind of help with all. I just thought we just, you know, showed up. I didn't know until later, right? But I didn't really process it until I became an adult. So literally, like how he says, when you go to Islam or Masjid Balala, everybody greets you like they've seen you forever. It doesn't matter what race, what background you are, we just act like your family. That's just how we operate, right? And I think it's just, it comes from even thinking about our lineage, right? So most Blacks have migrated, right, from Midwest, right? So as we were talking about the Midwest, you know, my family is from Missouri, so everything is like a smile and, you know, we're the show me state, right? So and people always say, you talk a lot, right? And you smile a lot. And I'm like, well, I got it honest because both my parents are from Missouri, right? And then being from, you know, LA and just used to just interacting with people. So I was 21, I think, when I went to my first masjid that was considered like a non-Black masjid. And my dad took me, and it was a masjid in Inglewood. And so around that time, my mother had just recently passed away, and I witnessed her pass away, and I was able to shroud her body, which is cleanse her body. And so I came out of that experience a little shook, right? Because I had just kind of been like practicing Islam, but not really like intently, this is what I'm, you know, this is what I'm choosing. So my dad saw that, and so he took me to this other masjid, and it was the first time I had never been greeted when I walked in. It was very strange, but I didn't think, I don't know, I didn't know what to think, because when you're used to just being greeted and celebrated, it felt weird, right? I was like, okay, well, maybe because they don't know me, right? Right. So anyway, long story short, I ended up going into the separate space, right? So this is 30 years ago, basically, right? So they had a separate room, and they had a speaker system. It wasn't TVs back then. And the women talked the whole time. They didn't talk to me, but they talked the whole time. And I couldn't hear the khutbah, the sermon. So when I came out, my dad was like, oh, didn't you hear the khutbah? It was so beautiful. And I was like, no, I couldn't hear anything. And he was like, why? And so I told him. And so then my dad went straight to the imam, who was like a minister, and he looked at him in his face and he said, you should not treat your women this way. My daughter is coming here. She's born and raised Muslim, and now you've put a bad taste in her mouth. And I was like, I didn't say that, but I guess he knew his child, right? And so, you know, he admonished him on the spot. And so I heard years later that the masjid like has changed and evolved. I don't know if it was from my father, but and my dad, when I tell him that story now, he does not remember. He's like, it sounds like something I would do. But I love that my dad stood up for the patriarchy, stood up against the patriarchy at that moment, right? And the misogyny. He was like, nope. Because we were so celebrated in our space. Like, we're really, Black women are like, and Black Muslim women are kind of like how it is in a Black church, right? They really run everything, right? That's how it is, you know. Of course, we let the men lead. No, I'm just kidding. We, you know, have the men are leading, but you know, we really are like the backbone of, you know, the space, right? And so to come away from that was kind of weird. So that was one time I felt other. The last time was when I don't wear earrings, or if I just wear like a full Black himar, I get mistaken for Egyptian by Egyptians, right? So until I speak, they don't think anything about it, right? So I was at Hajj in 2007, and I felt some othering there, even though I was in Kimar, but I'm a little bit vocal. So I just was like, la, you know, if somebody would like step in my space, I'd be like, nope, not doing that, right? But that was kind of the times when I felt other. So
she's telling the truth about the women in our community. They are very strong and resilient. You know what I'm saying? They are the backbone. So I had to get at her. But see, that's the
We're
truth.
gracious though. We're gracious. We don't do too bad until they get out of sorts. Then we have to,
Yeah.
act up a little bit.
Look. Ain't nobody scared of y'all.
I see Sister Khadijah and Sumaya here. They probably can back me up. Back me up, y'all.
Oh, they here? I was just playing.
You won't get no plate during Ramadan. Hold on.
See, we're getting a little extra humor that everybody that came didn't know they were going to get. But I think one thing that you shared, Kenyatta, about being in the other room at the masjid is an experience that I've seen in the Orthodox Jewish community, where men and women are also separated, and a lot of times women they don't feel a part of it, and so it's the same kind of thing. They're talking, they're gossiping, they're not paying attention to whatever the sermon or the prayers that are going on. And I think that, some people say, oh, that's just how women are, but I think it stems from being separated out and not being able to be a full participant. I know that my life has been shaped by intersections of identity. Being female makes a difference in our country, in our world. Being Jewish, growing up right next to Compton, Umar, I grew up in Paramount, and there certainly weren't Jews in Paramount. I was the only one I ever knew going through school. Growing up with one foot in poverty in my home, but then my other foot in my relatives' home who were very wealthy. And experiencing that privilege and frankly, the privilege of having white skin in this country. How do you two think your gender shapes your experience as a Black Muslim? I know Kenyatta shared a little bit already, but maybe you could share some more about, how does the intersection of being Black and being either a woman or a man shape your experiences in Islam and in Muslim spaces? Kenyatta, you could go first.
That's a deep one. I've traveled, all over the United States. I've traveled outside of the country. So I'll say this: I'm grateful for the foundation that my parents, my grandparents, my uncles, aunts, all of the play ones, the godmothers and the community. If I didn't have my community, I wouldn't be a fourth of who I am. Like, I have Sister Khadijah Shabazz on here right now. She doesn't know the impact of what she's had on my life. I've never expressed that to her, but she's impacted my life considerably. Their impact has allowed me to have a voice. And like a Sister Ann Shakur always says, you've been the same person you were since you were 2 years old. You just grew up, right? You've always been vocal, right? But the reason I've been like that is because I've been allowed to be like that, right? And I've been celebrated for being like that. So if I didn't have that, I think it would have made me feel more like how folks feel who don't have that opportunity, right? I would have felt, like I had to remove myself or be shameful or, make excuses for. But it's really just caused me to just kind of be more in your face. And, some people talk about me because, I'm very in the middle, like our beloved prophet says, travel the middle course, right? So some conservative spaces, they don't really care for me. But my dad celebrates that, right? Because I did a kubbah or bayan for a women's mosque, and my dad was sharing with this conservative person, like, yeah, my daughter did the kubbah today at the women's mosque, and he was stoked, right? But if I didn't have a father that was so like having my back like that, then maybe I would feel more uncomfortable. But what it does, it just makes me want to just counteract and go against the misogyny that we're faced in this country, and it's not just for me, because I'm able to navigate and move in different spaces. I mean, I'm sure people, look at me different. My sisters say all the time, because I'm the only one in my family that at this present moment that covers fully. And my sisters always say, you forget that you're covered, don't you? And I'm like, it's been so long. Yeah, I do. And it's not that I'm doing anything out of balance, but I'm laughing and I'm joking. I mean, I'm free. I don't have any inhibitions. And so I think the way that I operate sometimes can be a turnoff for folks. And other times I've had people who have come to me, they follow me on Facebook, and they'll walk up to me and they'll say, you really inspired me to just kind of step out of my shell, because I've always felt like I couldn't have a voice, right? And there's so many other people that have inspired me. So I try to, pay it forward. Hope that answered the question, but I hope I pay it forward. That's the goal.
You on mute.
My dog was barking. I put myself on mute. I'm going to dig a little deeper in that, and something that I've heard both from a Black Muslim friend and Jews of color is, for a woman, when it comes to marriage, being a Black Muslim woman, is that an issue?
The people on the call that know me are going to laugh because I've been married a few times. So I've never had a problem with getting married. But I've always married within my race. So I don't know if I was say I was in a space of like Orange County or something like that. I mean, I was born and raised in South Central LA. My parents stayed in the inner city part of South Central LA intentionally, right? Because they were both teachers and community people. So I've married people who were in my, religious space. I've never had an issue. So I can't really speak to that. I think now that I'm 50, and the shift, it may be a little different. But yeah, some folks I have seen them have, issues as well. But I will say this, let me say this. It's been a challenge in the sense of, and this is to not negate anyone in any way, shape, or form, but I think I'm a college degreed person. So let me just say that. One, I come from parents who were teachers, right? So it wasn't that there weren't students or people who weren't educated, but it was that I always was the one who was more educated at times, if that makes sense, right? Because I went straight to college at 18. What choice did I have? I had two parents for teachers, right? So let me just say that some of the folks that I married, at times, maybe we weren't as equal in the sense of maybe education-wise, right? But maybe our Islam was in the same space, or we had the same kind of hobbies or things that we like to do. So I would say that there was some deficit at times, but I don't regret anything because I believe that everybody comes in your life for a reason, season, or a lifetime to teach you and for you to learn from each other. So, yeah. But I do know some people who go to more conservative spaces, or they're living, they go to a master that's closer to their job, and there's, not anyone there that maybe even will speak to them because of them being Black. So yes, I have heard that.
Susan, I wonder if I could say something real quick, and Kenyatta and Omar, please forgive me, because obviously this is from an outside perspective insofar as this topic of marriage and being Black and Muslim. I'm South Asian, but I came here when I was 7 years old, grew up in America, things like that. And when I was in grad school, we studied Islam in America, and we studied the Black American experience, right? And its contrast to the immigrant experience here. And I think, one of the things that's really bittersweet, but there's no sweetness to it. It's just pure bitter. It's just what the perception of Black Muslims for marriage within a South Asian community, right? In my generation, I think I know I have family who's married into African American families and Black Muslims, but you know what? The generation above me, it's something that's really like, oh, you can't do it. It's pure racism is what it is. There's no other way to, you can't sugarcoat it in any other way, because not only does it go against every mandate within the faith itself, but it's just black and white, literally racism, right? Because what you see with the immigrant community, and this is very similar to not just the Muslim immigrant community, but really any immigrant community that you see. And this goes into race relations and the history of race, but it's the quest to be white, right? And so then when you're trying to be so white, and then the thought of like a Black person coming into the family, it's just there's been relationships that have literally been broken because someone, you know, wanted to marry, or someone married an African American or a Black Muslim. So it's definitely, I think, Kenyatta, you're very blessed in the sense that your community and your father, I think, having the role that he played in the African American community, and you, like you said, being raised as, you know, like celebrated, you know. When I look at communities like in Missouri, and my parents are still in Missouri, and yes, it's changing slowly, but I tell you what, that, you know, it's almost like a less than perception, right? And which again completely negates like the core of the belief. But in a practical sense, you see that, you know, and that's really one of the big challenges that I think the Muslim American community as a whole faces. I would say the whole world faces, but most certainly the Muslim American community, that somehow that interracial marriage is like, you know, what are you doing type of a thing, because you're marrying into like an African American family, or you're in love with a Black man. So I had to say, just because I've seen my own very close friends, you know, go through that, and it's very disheartening, and it's really quite, actually, it just makes you angry, you know. Sorry,
Thanks
Omar.
for sharing that, Melia.
Yeah, of course.
Umar, what can you share on that same, not necessarily on the marriage subject, but you could certainly add to that, but your experiences being a male, a Black male in Muslim spaces?
Being an African male in Muslim spaces, raised under my mom and my foster mom, they taught me about how to facilitate my masculinity early in my life. You know what I'm saying? One time, 2 girls chased me home, and they wanted to fight me. And my foster mom put me back outside. Better get out there and handle your business. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, you know, I was raised in a way to be a man, a male, and to be in contact with that. And then when I became Muslim, you know, that reinforced what a man is, what our responsibility is in the community. You know, my first job in the community was to be on security at the front door. And our job is to escort, is to watch everything in your environment and take care of that area. And don't leave your post until properly relieved. So you were given a responsibility. So the men of our community are given responsibility to be that man in the community, to be there, to be an upcoming role model, because you watch other men like Donald and Brother Bakir and Papa Shaw and Imam Sadiq. And they gave us their values to instill within us. So when it comes down to being a student of Imam Sadiq Safir, and you know, you inherit these values that's in the Quran of how to embrace mankind and how to treat other people and how to help and serve them. And with the programming that we have with Humanitarian Day, you know, it kind of breaks that stigma of racism, because we serving all sorts of people. You feel me? So, and I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot where a brother called me one time and was like, Umar, I want to marry this sister. She's from another community. I said, well, go on and marry. What's the problem? Her parents. Well, I said, well, I was trying to instruct him. Approach her dad, you know, have him sit down with him. He did that. And after meeting him, they forbidden her to see him again, and they end up marrying her to a Caucasian dude, to a white boy, right? The white boy ended up putting hands on her, mistreating her, and beating her, and now they're divorced. You know what I'm saying? So whatever that is that prevents African Americans and immigrant families from coming together, that's something that's outside of our deen, and that's part of the colonialism that has been placed within our ranks, in our minds, in our subconscious. Colonialism has played a great, it has played, it plays a great part in our critical thinking when it comes to treating each other equally. Because one of the stories I think about is when Adam greeted the angels, and one of them stood out. Iblis like, nah, I ain't with it. So by Iblis breaking or disobeying God's command, Iblis had the audacity to say, I'm gonna show you that your creation is not worthy of your mercy. I'm gonna come at them from the right, the left, the back, and the front, and convince them to change their nature. So since the beginning of time, mankind has been worked on to disobey the Creator's commandments. And when we treat one another unequally, and then we have this thing called colonialism, which is another trick of Iblis or Shaitan, the great evil one. When we utilize our platforms to perpetuate racism, we have taken another position other than serving the Creator. You feel me? So I don't know where people get these. If you look at wherever you're from, people in the audience, wherever you're from, if your country has been invaded or have any part of European government in your society, colonialism is there. And it plays a great part in how even Muslims treat each other. So but right now, and now look at this. There are families. That's not all of Islam. There are families who have accepted Africans into their families. I know a few of them who accepted an African male into their families and welcomed them and loved their grandbabies. But those that don't, they have something to work out in their hearts, because it's not of the Quran, it's not of the criteria that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. I haven't seen it in Torah, I haven't seen it in the gospel of Jesus, and none of that. So whatever people working on with this racism thing, you've been colonized, and we need to work this colonization out of our minds so we could get back on the path and get on the ark.
I love that he lifted up. Can I just really, can I piggyback on that? Can I come back and
No
say,
pork, no pork.
I'm glad that he lifted that up, because I'm usually the one that goes like real radical, right? And starts going in on how colonized we are. You mentioned Kenya earlier when we were talking. My name is from Kenya. I'm named after the first Black president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta. And my father named me that because if I would have been a boy, I would have been named Jomo. So thanks for girl, Kenyatta. But he named me that because he wanted me to be a leader, right? And when I grew up, I learned all about African history, Black history, all of the poetry, the Harlem Renaissance, right? So I had a strong foundation of my Black culture. I think what happens is that, just like he spoke, when you go to other countries that have been so colonized, they don't even know, by the British and the Europeans, they can't even see the threads of where their existence came from, right? All they know is what they see on the media, right? So if you see people on Facebook, they have this understanding or this ideology of what Americans are, right? And when you travel to other countries, right? When I went to Hajj, it was America, right? That's what you hear over and over again, no matter what. And so I agree with him. When you have this colonized space, you can't even really see outside of that, right? Unless you start to delve deeper, unless you start to read books, unless you start to read other people's literature. But in the Quran, Allah says, I made you a nation and a tribe so that you may learn from one another. Right? Not that you may despise one another, right? And so in Muslim Arc, we speak about that all the time. But I think what happens is, and we do these trainings on talking about race, right? It takes people that first training, people are like so oblivious, and they will say to us, but I'm not a racist. What are you talking about, right? Like, I don't understand that. But what I'm telling them is that when you deal with the media and you really base your life on what the media is telling you about Black folks, right? So your thought is, I'm coming to this country, I want, and this is what I've heard people say, not what my opinion is. I've come to this country. I worked hard to get to this country, right? You know, my parents or grandparents, where we were, they've struggled for us to get here, and I've heard such horrible things about your people, right? I've had people to even say that, and I'm like, what have you heard, and what made you think that way? And I tell them, I compare the civil rights struggle to their civil wars at time, right? You think about, you're just, all of us are counteracting an oppressor, right? So when you kind of make that comparison and show them that who these people are and who was oppressive, right? And we know that there are Caucasians that are allied folks, right? Who would never do anything like that, right? But what we try to do is show the history that happens in this country of why they're even thinking that. And where did they even get that from, right?
So you've both led me into kind of the next question, which I think you'll be happy with, Kenyatta. That's okay. Is that, you know, we think about the two things that are on our mind right now in America are 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11, and the long war in Afghanistan. And I wanted to pose the question first about Afghanistan in terms of colonial and nation building versus you know, what Afghani life is like under the Taliban. Those of us who are students of history and students of mass atrocities and genocides and things like that know that it's not possible to build a nation. It's got to be built within. So as Black or African Muslims from American families, does your experience bring any different perspective than that of perhaps Southeast Asian Muslims on what's going on in Afghanistan right now? Either one of you can answer.
Kiana, want to go?
Yeah, you know, it's so disheartening, one, you know, just to see, although I fight this oppressive system, I am aware of my privilege that I am American, right? So I don't negate that. But we also know that America has been this powerhouse and has come in to save people, per se, right? And not to say that the Taliban is not bad, right? We are very aware of that. And for Muslims, practicing Muslims, we hold them in a very low regard, because the messaging that they're giving is an oppressive messaging. And if you read any context of the Quran, it speaks of the oppressor and that the oppressor will be dealt with by God, right? And so from my perspective of, yes, there were some things that needed to definitely be changed, right, in Afghanistan, but I don't think it was, because remember how I said about something about the people, right? The people didn't get to have the conversation about what they felt should have happened, right? And I'm coming from a very socialist platform in that realm, right? But if you look at Islam, we speak from a very socialist lens when you think about it, right? So the people should have been given the opportunity to do that. But we have two tyrants when you think about it, right? America, this powerhouse, and the Taliban, right? So the Taliban being very conservative, right? And America, quote unquote, being liberal, but they're both coming in and they're really fighting each other, right, for this power. But meanwhile, the people get lost, right? They don't get to have the necessities that they need, right? And so the real tragedy is that a lot of women were lost in that, right? I know men were affected, but the women were just affected in such a manner of just degrading. When we know that Islam, when it was revealed to Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago, over 23 years the Quran was revealed, one of the surahs or one of the chapters in the Quran speaks about the women. It's called Al-Nisa. There's a whole chapter, right? And it talks about women being able to inherit their money, that their money is their money. If they're married, Umar knows this, men are the maintainers and protectors of women. I don't have to spend a dime, right? My money gets to stay my money. Milia's money gets to stay her money, right? But we see this opposite thing that's happening, right? Okay, they're taking care of them, but they're taking care of them in such a way that's degrading, right? They don't get to go to work, they don't get to get educated, and all of that is untrue. Women are to be educated, right? So they're actually doing the opposite. So it's heart-wrenching to me. You know, I wish I could do more now that this civil war has come somewhat to a close, but just to see, you know, the other side of the inhumaneness of them being left on where the airplanes were, and they're just sitting there, just waiting. So where's the humanity is what my thought is. Where's the humanity?
That was a very loaded question. It had a couple of parts to it. First, I would like to say, may the Creator raise someone from among us to help all the oppressed people, from the Palestinians to the Afghans to African Americans to people of color, whoever is being oppressed by a system. I ask that God, the Creator, raise someone to help. The second thing is, you mentioned Afghanistan. I've yet to have a conversation with my Afghan friends so I could properly speak in context about what's going on. But there's a seen and there's an unseen that's going on and what's going on over there. You feel me? The Taliban is equivalent. They practice Islam like Ku Klux Klan practice Christianity. You feel me? So I don't really recognize them as putting down Islam in a righteous way. So I'm not going to expect anything from them. A year ago, if I remember, in the pandemic, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. A year ago, I remember there was an article where two groups legitimized legitimized the Taliban. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, a lot of times what we see in the media is not what we're truly seeing. So there's a bigger picture that I don't have enough knowledge to speak on, because I can only speak on the obvious, what I see, because Papa Shaw always tells us this African proverb: when the elephants rumble, the grass suffers. And I could see the people of Afghanistan suffering because the elephants are putting down their plan. I can remember George Bush saying that this is going to be a 20-year war. You know what I'm saying? So, and we know that there's a lot of other interests involved in that. Second part of the question is 9/11. Tragedy. Hands down, I can't argue with it. Whether somebody think it was a conspiracy theory or not, tragedy. Every September, I feel like trauma is being reintroduced into America, because a lot of our people were blamed. Were blamed, were called names and mistreated just because they come from a Muslim country. You see what I'm saying? So when 9/11 happened, the African American community were now able to step up and start consulting, advising, and caring for our people who was being marginalized by people who felt like it's your fault. You know what I'm saying, that this has happened to America. So and then right now, so you got groups like SCIC, ICJUP. You have a lot of interfaith dialogue that started happening after 9/11. And so right now, those who have the training is responsible for coaching, healing, providing liberation, and justice. I take that acronym from Sarah Jawade's coaching class, coaching organization, but we have the responsibility to do just that. because right now, trauma, every September, it never fails. They reintroduce trauma.
Mhm.
Like we want to celebrate trauma. And it's unfortunate what happened. Um, I just pray that the Creator raise someone from among us to help the oppressed, because there's a lot going on right now, and me just as a grass blade in the field, I can't even speak on it because I don't know the greater plan of what's going on. But what I can say is that our community is here to help coach those through racism, racist attacks, because um, African Americans have been the target of this same treatment of 9/11 that the Afghans has been experiencing for years. You know, our towns, our cities, Black Wall Street, Philadelphia, has been knocked off for whatever reasons. And then even during the Trump administration, we were being knocked off on a daily basis by law enforcement. So, you know, due to the work that Kenyatta is doing and the work that I'm trying to do, we're trying to build platforms for healing and to address these oppressive this oppressive behavior. Because what's going on in Afghanistan is unacceptable in any country. It's truly unacceptable. And I know the United States and whoever else, if you're going to help anybody else, help the Afghans. You know what I'm saying? So they got programs right now where you could take in an Afghan child, you know what I mean? And it's already hard on us, you know what I'm saying? But we can only play our part and coach our people through this situation because we all deserve a taste of justice.
Susan, can I add something real quick? And Sister Khadija, you said this beautifully in the comments. You said that, and being Black made us understand the situation because we've always been treated as less than. And I think that's one of the key things when it comes to September 11th. I remember right after September 11th, Omar and I have a very close friend, Precious Rashida Muhammad. We all did a fellowship together through USC.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We all did a fellowship together through USC. And then even prior to that, she was at Harvard, right? She left as I was entering. And so she, you know, I've always considered her, it's very difficult for me to articulate into words how much I love this woman and how much of a mentor and friend and sister I believe her to be, because she shaped so many things in my life. And one of the things I learned from her is, you know, the jewels of the African American experience in America, and how for the Muslim community, if the immigrant community and the other community would just pay attention, would just give credit, would just learn from that, right? It would completely reshape the community at large. Because, you know, one of the things when we talk about Islam in America, the indigenous Muslims in America are the African American Muslims of America, right? So what does that mean? These are, at the end of the day, I may be a citizen, and yes, I know no other country but my own, but I'm not indigenous to this country. My parents weren't from here, right? But the majority of the Muslim population in America is that of African American, and they're indigenous. So there's something to say about that insofar as surviving, insofar as thriving, and how they navigated the day-to-day and the challenges that they faced. And I specifically remember right after September 11th, Michael Wolff did this book, and it wasn't Taking Back Islam, I think it was another one, in fact, but Precious had a chapter in it, and it was a beautiful chapter because it talked exactly about that. Say, like, basically, like, listen, you feel oppressed now, you feel marginalized right now, this is our life. Right? This is who we are and who we continue to be in many cases. So here, just listen to us, right? Give us that validation, because, and again, this goes into colonialism, and that's a whole different conversation. You're absolutely right, Omar, but the perception of African American Muslims still being the other versus they are it, right? Particularly within the American spirit, they are it. And so, you know, I think for after 9/11, that was something for those of us who were blessed to know African American Muslims, who were close, who had friends and things like that, I think that's one of the things that we learned, that, wow, we never learned this in Sunday school. You know, our parents didn't tell us about the history of Muslims in America, starting with African American Muslims, right? But there's so much richness in that. And I think that's something that's still continuing. And I hope, and you know, our hope and prayer is platforms such as this allows for that to happen even more. Yes, Omar.
I became Muslim in 1998. So shortly after 1998 came 2001 when all this went down.
Mm.
And if it wasn't for, so then 2002 is when I got into the M Foundation. So between 2001 and 2002, I was kind of lost. I didn't know what to think because we had all this going on. But if it wasn't for the experience of my mentors, my elders, Imam Sadiq, Donald Bakir, a great brother, a dear friend of mine, Brother Saul, you know, if they didn't share that experience of how to cope and still hold my head up high and walk around as an African Muslim, I'll probably be tucking my tail and bowing down to everybody who come my way. But we ain't going down like that. You know, we can't go out like that. We have to come together and practice what our books say to the best of our capacity. Can't be the best Christian, the best Jewish, the best Muslim, but just do it the best way we can. And this is the way to show love, because they're showing so much hate. We have to counter that with, I guess the word is love. You know what I mean? We have to counter that with, and I'm not talking about the love that exists between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife. I'm talking about the love that exists when a mother embrace her child when he's first or her is first born, that dignity. So I'm not going to confuse love with the boyfriend and girlfriend thing, the husband and wife thing. I'm talking about true compassion, because right now they are unapologetically putting it down on those who are people of faith, and they think we soft. We not soft.
Yeah.
We're not soft.
And I think with in terms of the situation in Afghanistan, I mean, that's not just one program. That's a decade-long program devoted to understanding that dynamics that's involved in that. But I think if one thing we can always, one of the things that I always say when we're talking about any type of things like what's going on in Afghanistan, what the history of Saudi Arabia, any oppressive state, right? Any oppressive state where unfortunately Islam gets the credit for being for causing the oppression, anything like that. What I always invite and urge people to do is, please, it's very difficult to do, but one of the things that we must do in order to understand situations like that is differentiate between politics, economics, and religion. It's very hard to do that. But the thing is that it is intertwined. And unfortunately, who gets the blame is often the religion, right? Or the religion as it's being practiced there. And so I think it's really important when we're trying to dissect a situation in an oppressive situation. It doesn't have to be just, so many states in Nigeria, there's a huge oppression of Christians as there as well, right? So it's not just Islam, but in any state where there's some sort of oppression, I think the onus is on us, if we truly want to understand it, is we have to sit down, we have to do our own study, and we have to learn and the best way that we can understand the economics of that place, because that's a huge determining factor insofar as how a state is what it is. The economics, the politics, and then the religion. I think that's really, really important.
Last thing, I want to say this last thing. Sorry, Susan.
That's okay.
You got me hyped up. Anyway, look. What I want to say is, utilize your faith tradition to be somebody call came in. We have to utilize our faith tradition for the truth that's in it and practice that, and not just practice it, but implement it in the way that is just for everybody to share.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because we have other people that's hijacking our identities, and I'm tired of the Muslim being the scapegoat for oppression. We're not that. When established weight with justice and fall not short in the balance. Which of the favors of your Lord will you both deny? To kill one of humanity, to kill a man is like killing all of humanity. It is so much beauty, beautiful words that Allah has given us to practice and implement, but we are allowing this unseen figure to hijack our identity, and then we have to shuffle to get from behind this picture that they painted on us.
Yeah, I think
Anybody
what,
that's watching, whatever faith tradition you practice, be that and be true to the Creator with that, you know, and do as much good as you can to exemplify the words in your book. I think in Judaism it's like tikkun olam.
yeah, I was going to add that how important that is, and that, you know, until I got to know, I didn't grow up with any Muslims in my community, my circle, until I got to know many of my friends through New Ground and other means, to learn the truisms of Islam and the loving teachings. And it's much like when you read the Torah, is 36 different times it's commanded in the Torah to take care of the stranger. You know, that's got to be a pretty important message to be said that many times. And then I also wanted to pull out that thread that Amelia said about history. You know, the history that we're taught in the US. Yes, we're taught about slavery, but who were those people that were kidnapped and enslaved? Yeah. And if you look at where those people came from, I'm sure, you know, we know there had to have been Muslim enslaved. There had to be enslaved Africans that were Jewish, because it was in those countries that they came from, but we're not taught that history. I'm going to leave some final remarks to Kenyatta, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, I just was interjecting. I'm glad that you lifted that up, because that was the part that I wanted to say, because people always say, well, why did your parents convert to Islam? And I always just say, we're just going back to our original state, because I was able to trace my lineage on both sides of my family. And it was clear, no doubt, and most people who are in the same boat as me as a Black American would say that their lineage was the same and their family was Muslim, right? Or some kind of African traditional religion, right? And that's not to negate Christianity, but just to say that these folks were already practicing 400 plus years ago. We know that there are many Muslims who came to this country who continue to pray, who continue to do Ramadan, right? Who read the Quran, who had memorized the Quran as well. And so I want to just say the last thing for me is I didn't speak really on 9/11, and I was a principal when 9/11 happened. So I had children in my care, right? And I had 2 schools at that time. And it was just me trying to, because I was leaving, about to go to work, and my staff called me, one of my staff members, and said, are you watching the TV? And I'm like, no, I'm getting in the car. I'm headed to, I lived in Long Beach at the time and was working in South Central. And I said, I'm headed to the school. Like, what's happening? I'm thinking something has happened at the school. She's like, turn the TV on. I can't even describe it to you. So when to see the towers be hit, and then to hear it was saying that somebody who was declaring that they were Muslim from my faith tradition was even more of just a blow, right? To see and be Black, Muslim, and American. So I said to my hairstylist at the time, because she was saying, oh, what a world to be in and be American. I said, but how about you being a person who is American and Muslim? I identify as both of those. And I said, there were a lot of Muslims that died on 9/11 who were just in the World Trade Center working, right? I had a good friend who was supposed to go to work that day, called in sick, did not go. She's alive today, right? So we know that there are many, many people that died in there. It was so horrific. But the last thing I will say is that from our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means peace and blessings be upon him, he said the weakest of faith is to try to change an action with your heart. So you first try to change it with your hand, and then you change it with your mouth, right? Or reverse, mouth and then your hand. And then the week is in your heart, right? So we all can speak up and speak against it, right? We have that voice in America, right? And we can try with our hand, right? Where it's not maybe in a physical sense of harming anyone, but maybe just like how Umar was saying, we can bring the folks that are trying to come in and get respite and come as it's blanking out, I'm blanking out, but as refugees, right? And to be able to come and live here, we can reach out to them. We can, even if we can't have them in our space, in our homes, we can give them a meal. We can give them a smile at the minimum, right? But then the weakest is in your heart in saying that this is wrong and this is an injustice. And that's on any matter in my mind. And I love that we have woven throughout this day all of our Abrahamic faiths, right? When we speak about Jewish and Muslim and Christian. So that's where we all align with as well. So it's been an honor today as well. Thank you.
Many, many thanks to the two of you for joining us. We so appreciate it. These are important conversations to have. And I'm going to quickly hand it over to Nelia, our SCIC Executive Director, for a few quick announcements.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Kenyatta. Thank you, Susan, for moderating this important conversation. And thank you for all of you who've joined us and stayed. I know I apologize. We usually end at 4. It's almost 4:21 right now, or it is. So thank you for staying with us. And I think it just kind of shows how important these conversations are. And our goal and our hope is to continue these conversations because it is much needed. And we will do so next month as well. We'll have the flyer in the coming days, but it will be focused on being Black and Jewish in America and what that means. And come again in November. This is a monthly series that we do, the Courageous Conversation. We'll be focusing on the understanding or the perception of Thanksgiving from the Native American perspective. What does that mean? And I think Cheryl, if you're still there, yeah, you're here. I'm just going to show some flyers really, really quick. And one of the things, this is our reality of the pandemic that we live in. One of the ways that we feel that we can contribute to making this, hoping this pandemic ends sometime soon, is in one of our sponsor programs, the Harbor Area Farmers Market. In conjunction with the city of Long Beach, we're providing free vaccinations every Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. And this is particularly in the Bixby Knolls Farmers Market on 4570 Atlantic Avenue. So every Thursday, 3 to 5 p.m., we encourage you to go, encourage others as well that you know of, encourage them to attend as well. The next flyer we have is the week of September 21st, SCIC is part of this initiative called Long Beach Gives, which is we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but for time's sake, essentially what we're looking for, one of the programs that we'll do that week on that Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. on Zoom is a night of spoken word. So we want to ask for submissions. We want to ask for your poetry. We want to ask for your art. What does interfaith unity, peace, compassion, love, and respect mean to you? And what is your vision for a hopeful future? So we want to showcase the community. We want to showcase your thoughts and through the means of spoken word. So if you are interested, please share your work with us. You can email MC office at scinterfaith.org for that. And then moving forward, yes, so Long Beach Gives September 23rd. It's a day of giving. We'll talk a lot more about that, and I'll share more information on our website and on our constant contact about that as well. But keep that day. That's a day that we encourage people to support nonprofits all throughout Long Beach. Last year, SCIC in particular, we were able to raise $20,000, and this is just by donations from individuals. And I think over 200 nonprofits are selected to be a part of this day. So we'll share more information about that. And then I don't know what's next. Okay, September 23rd, another monthly initiative we have is the Religion 101, fourth Thursday of every month in the evening time. This month, September 23rd, 7 p.m., we'll be talking to Reverend Elena Larson, who was a Long Beach native, but now is in Ohio. She is the minister for volunteers of the whole Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. So she'll be speaking with us about her faith, and so we can learn from that. Is there more? Yes, of course. October 24th, one of the other initiatives that SCIC has been involved in for the last, my goodness, 50 plus years is raising funds to end hunger, both in our local community as well as the world, through the means of Crop Hunger Walk. So our next Crop Hunger Walk is coming on October 24th. It'll be the Long Beach Area Hunger Walk. So there's information about that. All of this can be found on our website as well. And anything else, Cheryl? And I do want to encourage you to visit our website, scinterfaith.org. You'll find our annual report there, which encapsulates all the programs and what we do and what we've done and what we strive to do in the future. So that's just the cover page of our report. So we hope that you take time to take a look at that. And of course, as all nonprofits, we are literally, my goodness, we are more than 90% just supported by donations, big and small. So we encourage you, if you're able to please support the work that we do so that we can continue programs like this. Literally, 99% of all our programs are free to the community, but we do need help to sustain our organization. So if you're able to, you can go online, scinterfaith.org/donate. You could text help SCIC to 44321, or the old-fashioned way of sending in a check to our address right there. Anything would be greatly appreciated. All right, I think that's it. So yes, so Susan, you thank you. And if there's any last words that you want to say before we say good night or good evening?
No, just thank you so much. We're blessed to have all of you here and blessed to have this conversation, and we know we'll continue more kinds of conversations like this one.
Exactly.
So thank you.
All right, have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you,
Shalom.
Susan.
Peace.
Shalom alaikum. I learned to say shalom. Yes.